Hello gamers, Powered Heal here, and we are back after the grind. So thank you guys very much for bearing with me. I haven't been posting videos during the grind. Really just kind of wanted to kind of get in the zone and get it done, and I had the time to be able to do that for this release, so I figured why not take advantage of it. So I appreciate you guys sticking around, waiting for the next video, and some of you guys even came into the stream to check things out and to support and stuff like that, so I really appreciate that. It was super fun having you. It was really fun having people to talk to. Like, this video is going to be about kind of like the grind and how I feel about it, and it was really nice having people just pop in the chat sometimes to talk to. So even if you have any questions or anything like that, or you just want to come in and say hi and talk about the game, always feel free to do that anytime. I was talking with people about PoE 2 and stuff like that as well, so we can talk about other games in the chat, and whatever you guys want when you come in here, I'll pretty much respond to. So it was fun having you guys. But yeah, I kind of wanted to make this video as like a retrospective, because I feel like I'm kind of done now with like the grind. Technically I'm only 59, but I basically stopped leveling like about 2 days ago, I would say, or like maybe a day and a half ago. I was like 58 and some change, and could have easily finished it out to 60, but there's not really a point, in my opinion, especially on a healer, because you don't really gain much from going 58 to 60. You're not even going to use like your max level abilities in dungeons for the most part. So, and you're obviously still needing to farm your pre-best, right? So naturally, when you factor in just doing the dungeons themselves, quests for the dungeons, attunement quests, stuff like that, the last couple levels just kind of do themselves. I don't even think I'm going to do my cloth turn-ins, because there's just not really a point to, like, it's not that much gold, but there's not a point to even wasting the gold. So yeah, I'm just kind of cleaning up some endgame stuff, and pretty much done with the grind part. But that's what I want to talk about in today's video, because I had seen some stuff in my guild chat of people talking about the leveling and everything like that, because obviously everybody's doing it, and it made me think of a couple things, and I thought it'd be a good topic for kind of a video conversation, right? So basically, what the debate was, or the discussion was in the guild chat, was somebody had mentioned that they're going to use like a booster or something like that, to like get themselves to max level, because they just hate the leveling process. They completely loathe it, and it was basically a debate about that, like the leveling process in itself, boosting, and the one guy was basically like, well, how could you do a boost, because the best part of the game is like 1 to 60, and the other guy was from the complete opposite perspective, and he was just like, I don't know how you can say that, the game is only at 60. And I think I have a take that's like, I feel like the take is usually one of these two, right? There's a lot of people in the camp of they just love the leveling process of getting to 60, and then the other camp is that they just love the end game. For me, I think it's like, it's not necessarily a little bit of both, but it's more so that for me, the level 60 grind does serve a specific purpose, and that's kind of like what I want to talk about in this video, and why I think stuff like like paying somebody to boost you and stuff like that is a bad thing for the game, and should be policed more aggressively. Like, obviously this isn't a video really talking about that specifically. I am against it. I have no problem saying that I'm against it, but that's kind of like a different topic for a different video, and like things what Blizzard could do to kind of like prevent some of the stuff from happening. But yeah, so this video is going to be about the grind itself, and I'll be straight up, like, I am one of those people who I don't really like leveling in the traditional sense. So it is absolutely a grind for me in every sense of the word. And if you popped into the stream like over the past couple days, there's probably been some times where I've seen really chipper and kind of upbeat, and like, oh, we're slamming, we're blasting, we're this. But other times, we've had the stream title be slamming and blasting, and we weren't exactly slamming and blasting as hard as we hoped to be. And I was probably a bit downcast or annoyed, by various things. I was probably ranting about stuff at various points throughout the grind, like probably stuff that is irrational, essentially, like stuff that needs to be in the game, but just like, or just like I think at one point I was just shit talking like mages because there wasn't any of them in the LFG to do dungeon cleave with or whatever. So like obviously, when you're doing like a prolonged grinding activity like that, you're gonna have those moments of frustration. And but for me, here's I guess the main point that I want to try and get at in this video is that something can be frustrating, right, and a grind in the literal sense of like you're grinding yourself to be able to do it, but it can also be fun in the very same breath, and maybe not in the same moment necessarily, but holistically, it can be both of those things. And I think people who've ever done anything like in sports or something, like I used to run a lot, and I feel like it was very much akin to that actually. Like obviously, this game is more of like a microcosm of like your running scene might be or something like that, right? When I was running competitively, but it is very similar in some respects. Like there'd be some days where you're just like running, like these 10, 12-mile runs, because I did a cross-country track as well, like both, right? And you're just kind of like, why am I doing this, right, bro? Like I must be like mentally ill to be doing this. Like it doesn't make any sense to do this at all. Like normal people don't do this. Like this makes no sense. Like, it's just like weird, right? And I would just have these thoughts, like pretty much kind of like fairly often, But then like competing and racing and everything like that, like it was a lot of fun, and like trying to just like outlast your opponent, like try and like I always like I love to picture myself as just like, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of the story like Harrison Bergeron, the short story, I think by Kurt Vonnegut, and it's basically the idea of like these people are given handicaps in society according to their like how good they are at various things. So if you're really intelligent, you'll have something be put on your head, right, and it buzzes in your ear, and it basically like makes it hard to think. If you're really strong, you'll have like weights put on you, right? And not that I was like particularly considering myself like super strong or anything like that, or super fast in like the sprinter sense, but I would always like to imagine, like I liked the idea of being able to endure, and I think that's one of the things that like why I kind of like liked the grind of running in a sense, because it was like when it came down to like the race and stuff, I wanted to be like, I can endure more than you. Like I don't care. Like I will ignore that. Like I will suffer more than you. And that was kind of like it was always like fun to me. I don't know if that's weird to you guys or whatever, but there's just like a certain aspect of fun to that, and I kind of feel the same way with like Classic WoW. And I'm going to make another video to talk about, I think I'm going to call it like the ebbs and flows of Classic WoW, but this one's going to be something to do with the grind itself and why the game being a grind at the start is not bad. And basically, I think it comes down to just the fact that it's finding a way to navigate through the rough part, which is the fun for me. And it was the same with running, right? It's like, how am I going to like navigate through this race? Like both physically, but physically is not really as big of a deal in the sense, because physically you're just running on either a track or the course, right? If you're doing cross-country race. It was more of like, how am I mentally going to navigate this to make sure that like I'm mentally prepared to do everything I need to do at every stage of the race to be able to go, and sometimes that involves just completely zoning out. Other times it involves, just like raw willing yourself to do something, like maybe at the very end of the race if you need to kick or something like that. And I feel like it's very similar in Classic WoW, actually. It's kind of like you're going through so many, like there's so many variables that you can't control in the game, right? And navigating all those variables and trying to find a solution or a path through to the end is fun, right? And it's not fun every step of the way. You're going to be really frustrated sometimes. You're going to feel like quitting. I remember in this grind at level like 30 something, some of my guildmates started to hit SM and they were doing dungeon cleaves, and I was like solo, and I felt myself starting to fall a little bit behind in XP. And I had a couple, like, it wasn't just that, because like at that level you can still kind of compete okay with most dungeon cleaves outside of the mage cleaves. But I just was having like a bad, like I was having bad levels, like they weren't really super going my way, and with like quest drops and spawns and stuff like that, and it was getting kind of frustrating. I was like, oh, like, I feel like I'm starting to fall behind, like I'm starting to kind of like lose it a bit here. And then we just kept pushing, right? There were a couple levels that were like really tough. Like I think like level 30 to like 33 was pretty tough. And we just kind of got ourselves to around like 34, 35. We even grinded a bit in like Desolus in an area where it's not bad to grind necessarily, but I just wasn't planning on doing that. That was not the plan, like going into a certain thing. I found myself a little bit behind in terms of where I need to be level-wise, even to kind of do the questing. Maybe because I had grouped it up for certain quests to get them done quicker, stuff like that, right? So we kind of found ourselves in some circumstances that we didn't plan for, and I just kind of like bit down and bared through it. And then I just found an SM group, and at first it was like kind of pulling teeth, because I normally don't like to micromanage people in this game when I don't have to, right? Because I don't like to be the backseat guy, or kind of like take other people's fun out of the game necessarily. But we had some mage groups in the beginning that maybe people were new to mage, or they'd never mage grinded before, and they just didn't really like know what to do, kind of, right? And so there was a little bit of frustration there. Even it was kind of like in library because library is actually one of the tougher places to pull with all the stuns and stuff like that. And that was a little bit frustrating, but we finally got the group dialed in for that, and we got some good XP. And we moved on to Armory. Armory was like kind of free, because it's much easier to grind than Library, because it has like almost all melee mobs, so you don't even have to like get fancy with the pulls. You can pretty much just body pull as much as you want. And we got some really good XP in there. And then we moved on to Cath, and that was another area where it was like, there were a couple times with some groups where I just had to like kind of lay down the law, and like not in a mean way or anything like that, but just kind of like get into the leadership role a bit, which I tend to be more reluctant to do. Like I feel like I can do it, but I'm not like it's not my first choice, if that makes sense. And I was kind of like explaining how to do everything, some of the pulls and stuff like that, and then we actually started getting some really good XP, and it kind of went from being like, oh, like I'm falling behind, this is bad, to kind of like, oh, okay, like we're kind of catching up, but I'm doing this thing, I'm supposed to be getting a lot of XP doing this, and we're not really hitting anywhere near the max threshold, to then finally getting to that max threshold and getting these people to kind of like work in synergy, and it being like a well-oiled machine, right? And then even when somebody leaves, that's obviously really frustrating sometimes, right? But bringing the new person up to speed, getting them into the rotation, all that stuff is kind of endearing in some sense, even if it's sort of frustrating at the time. Because you kind of had to like go through it to get your levels, right? And if you don't do it as well, then you're not going to get your levels as quickly. There's like a motivation factor there. So even the fact that I don't necessarily like leveling is kind of a motivation in itself to challenge myself to do it better, if that makes sense. So yeah, I found that like kind of really fun there. And then we had some I'd say like the 40s to 50s, or the mid 40s to 50s was another little bit of a struggle, because some of the ZF groups can be tough at first. If they want, a lot of them try and go there a little bit under leveled, and it doesn't always work out for the best. So there's some growing pains there, but then we kind of found a good guild group, and that carried us a long way. And then we hopped into BRD and started slamming. And, it wasn't perfect all the time. And people at some points had, like, different philosophies about what we were trying to do. We had some people trying to kind of, like, farm gear. They were more focused on that. Other people just wanted raw XP. There was some conflicts there. But at the end of the day, we kind of, like, sorted out, did some long sessions, and kind of grinded through everything. And overall, I thought it was, like, it was kind of fun looking back on everything, Like, it was definitely a long grind. Like, parts of it were arduous, but it was definitely, like, rewarding in a sense. Not in the sense that it's, like... I think that the thing people always meme on when people say the 1 to 60 aspect of vanilla is rewarding is they're like, well, how could it be rewarding? Because anybody can do it, But for me, it's not necessarily about just completing it. It's more about, like, how you do it. And I think that can be, so that can be a factor in itself when talking about how it feels in terms of being rewarding, right? So there's some people where they just love doing the questing, right? So for them, it's not even a problem. But for those of us that don't really like it and it's a grind, it can be rewarding, I think, in multiple ways still. Like, doing something efficiently is very rewarding, right? So it could be, like, you're rushing just in terms of, like, pure days played, right? You want to be, like, and like, you're putting in the raw amount of hours. But then even somebody that doesn't have the raw amount of hours, right? They can get rewards out of it. And like, the other person would be rewarded just from finishing the game quickly, like, finishing the task as quick as they could, right? But even somebody who has to, like, maybe work 8-10 hours a day or something and can only play, like, 4 or 5 hours a night, they might get a rewarding feeling in the sense of, like, you know what, I can only play during these specific times, but I'm going to maximize those periods. And that's how I've been in periods where I can only play for certain times. It's like, I'm going to, like, maximize the amount that I can play, and I'm just going to accept that. And I'm just going to look at it as, like, this is kind of like an accomplishment, because I am, for the amount of time I'm putting in, I'm slamming. Like, when I'm in game, I'm slamming. And so I think people can find that very rewarding. It's like, yeah, maybe I'm not, like, at the front of the pack, but in terms of times played, I'm, like, super efficient. That can be something to be proud of in itself. So I do think that it's kind of like the getting to 60, the grind to get there. It's about finding your path and like, navigating that as well as you can, and that is in itself a challenge. And that's why I don't really agree with the people who say, like, one of the big points of that conversation that I was talking about earlier between the guild members was somebody's like, the guy was like, oh, it's kind of, like, shitty that you would pay for a boost, like a booster to boost your account. And the guy was like, well, yeah, but, like, who are you to tell me, like, how to play, because I love the end game, so why can't I just play the end game, And my response to that is, like, it seems to make sense on the surface. I get why some people feel that way, right? They kind of view it as, like, an a la carte thing. It's like, I like this particular aspect of the game, why can't I only play that? But I think the problem is like, the game as a whole, there it is intended to be like the leveling process is a very intentional aspect of the game, in a sense, right? At the end game, they do give you options to kind of branch into things you want to do, right? PvP, PvE, farming and consumables, the economy side. But so there is, like, a little bit of that sandboxy aspect there, but the leveling is kind of something that everybody has to go through if they want to fully unlock all of those trees, right? All of those endgame paths. If you don't want to unlock all those endgame paths, then I guess you don't have to level. But for most players, they want to do something within that band of things. And, I would say being level 60 or being close to level 60 at least helps typically in some fashion with that, right? So I guess what I'm saying, and probably what will be the title of this video, is that the leveling is an intentional obstacle, right? That's put in your way, and it's kind of like a challenge. It's almost like you're playing like a Resident Evil game or a single player game or something, and it's like we're putting this in front of you. You can use multiple people. You can work together, right? But you have to get from here to here, and you can take as much time as you need, but that is the goal. And we're gonna set you guys to it. There's no rules for how to do it really, aside from like obvious stuff like not hacking the game or anything crazy like that. You can spend as much time as you want, as little time as you want. All these things are your choices, but it's up to you to like forge a path to get to the max level and get to the end game. And that's part of the challenge in unlocking the rest of the game, right? So the problem I have with the whole boosting argument is that, and why people say it's okay to boost, it's like, well, no, it's not okay to boost because you're circumventing a large aspect of the game that other people had to go through to get to what they want to do. It's almost like if you're viewing this whole thing as like a race, sort of, right? In some sense. Now, it doesn't have to be like the most competitive race ever, right? But you could just view it as like some type of race overall, and people are getting to skip like a large chunk of the race. Like, in other words, like I invested like 5 days played to get this character level 60, and somebody else is investing nothing, essentially, right? Like that just doesn't, and then they get to start at the same point as me, right? Which doesn't make any type of sense. And I get that, like, for some people, the progression aspect of games is not really what they care for. But at that point, I'm kind of like, I don't know why you're playing MMOs, or specifically Classic WoW as an MMO. I think there's other MMOs that handle progression in a way that they would prefer better. Like something like even Retail WoW, right? Handles progression in a way that they would like more than a game like Classic WoW. And I think Classic WoW kind of really only makes sense if you view the game through the holistic lens, right? Because in many of the individual aspects, I guess, right, it falls short of other MMOs. So what do I mean by that? Like, in other words, it doesn't have the best endgame PvE, Classic WoW, right? In terms of, like, now all these things are going to be subjective, obviously, but when I say the best, I mean, like, kind of like the most well-built, well-thought-out, right? Most resources go. Like, I think we can all agree that Retail WoW has much more fleshed out endgame boss encounters than Classic WoW, right? It's not even a question. Retail WoW probably has better class balance for PvP in most cases. Obviously, in every expansion at the start, especially, there tends to be some things that are out of band, and they take a bit to kind of get reined back in. And then sometimes there'll be changes, new patches that break things again. But generally speaking, they're at least trying to bring things back in band as much as possible. Whereas in Classic WoW, that's not really the case, right? So there are some aspects of other games where, like, the PvP might be better, right? There's other games where, like, the farming systems, like New World, for example, compared to Classic WoW, I would say there's a lot more in-depth farming in New World. Like, if you're a gathering type person, you like to go out and do gathering. The auction house has more functionality in that game. So there's a lot of games that individually they'll beat Classic WoW on, like, any given one point, right? If you were to only make the comparison about one of these things, like the economy or the PvE, or the dungeons in PvE, or the raids in PvE, or the PvP, or the battlegrounds in PvP, right? If you compare any one of these aspects to another one of those aspects in a different game, that game might beat WoW, but Classic WoW. But the reason why I think so many people love this game and why we all come back and play it is because holistically, this offers an experience that is just, a lot of people find vastly superior to those other games. And part of that is the grind of the game. It's navigating through the tough points, and one of those tough points can be leveling, right? The leveling prevents you from just having, like, it kind of makes your class, right, a bit more meaningful, because it's a large time investment to get another class to max level, right? So you can't just be like, oh, I'm going to log on this class to do this thing super easily, and then I'm going to log on this class to do this thing super easily. So I'm going to farm on this class, I'm going to PvP on this class, I'm going to PvE on this class. Like, you can do that if you want, but you have to invest the time, right? So there's like an opportunity cost there in leveling the new character, right? And then I feel the same way about consumes. We talked about this in another video. Like, farming to get your consumes, in my opinion, is an integral part of the game, or farming something else to pay for other people to like buy consumes off them. That's obviously fine too. But all these things, there should be like an opportunity cost involved, right? And when you buy gold or when you buy a boost, what you're essentially doing is you're shortcutting that opportunity cost completely, right? Like, you're removing it from the equation. So now, like, you just, like, if you want to farm on a mage, you don't even have to level a mage, right? Because somebody leveled it for you. If you want to be the highest DPS in the raid on a warrior DPS, but you wanted, like, you could have the smooth leveling experience of leveling a mage and then have a booster boost you a warrior alt in time for the raids to come out on the 6th. And you basically just circumvented all the opportunity cost that comes with leveling a warrior, and you're now going to be able to reap all the rewards from it, right? And obviously that's just unfair, and it doesn't, I feel like it really does just go against the spirit of the game, in the sense that the opportunity cost is there for a reason. It's supposed to be it's supposed to be time consuming and an investment to acquire these things in game, and that's what makes them that's what kind of reins everything in a little bit, because at least at the start of a server, the idea is not everyone should be able to do everything, and that makes people interdependent on one another, right? And because things take like so long to do, but when you just shortcut these things by buying accounts, buying gold, etc., then, you know, I mean, what else is there to say? It's just like basically cheating the system. So, yeah, basically I found myself not agreeing with my guildmate who thinks leveling is the best thing since sliced bread, you know, but at the same time, I absolutely do agree that you shouldn't be boosting, and like the leveling has its own value, even if it's not just a pure enjoyment aspect. You know what I mean? And, you know, you can make other versions of games like this. Like, I'm not saying every MMO has to be like Classic WoW. You can make a raid sim where you don't have to level, you know, and everybody starts and you just have to progress gear-wise. Maybe there's not even gear progression. Maybe it's like a pure Mythic Plus challenge mode where you get to, like, you know, you make a game where there's no levels, you get all your abilities right off the bat, and, you know, you can configure them how you want, you can configure how the gear you want. That would be a cool game, I think, still. It wouldn't be a terrible game, but it'd just be a different game than Classic WoW, right? So the people who tend to like Classic WoW, I don't think would necessarily like that game. I mean, they might like that game. There's definitely crossover, right? But they wouldn't necessarily like that game. So, yeah, I don't know. I think that the appeal of this game, the Too Long Didn't Read here, is the appeal of this game is like the holistic sense of having to kind of dip your toes into everything a little bit to get the most out of it. And I just think people that are buying gold or boosting characters are missing a big part of the experience of the game. And, you know, for some people, maybe it's not as important and they'll be able to keep playing in spite of that. But I think a lot of the people that I know that like buy gold and stuff like that, or like boost characters, they tend to honestly just stop playing at some point anyway, right? And I don't think it's necessarily because they boosted a character or bought the gold, if that makes sense, but it's more just like the mentality that they had that made them feel like they had to do that, right? Or that was an acceptable thing for them to do, just means that that's not like a mentality that tends to stick around inside the game for very long, obviously, right? Because it, you know, the game, there's not, I guess, much point if you circumvent all the hard things to do in the game to get your character strong, then your character is just strong easily, and I feel like that's boring for most people unless they're trying to do maybe like a specific thing. Like you see these, like a lot of the like top speedrunning guilds probably have people paying people to boost and stuff like that because they're making it into a specific competitive activity, right? So for those people, they'd maybe stick around a little bit longer because like they're very invested in the competitive aspect of things. There's some players I know if they're like that, but in terms of like your average player, I think the player that tends to like level his own character and stuff and farms his own gold tends to stick around longer because they're just more attuned to what the game is looking to provide, right? And they're not trying to completely cut out large swaths of the game, to hyper focus on like one specific thing that they'll eventually get bored of. So yeah, kind of a long ranty video, I guess, but that's kind of my thoughts on my grind to 60 and just my thoughts about the process in general and how, I don't think that grinding has to be a bad thing. And I think that the grind can be like an integral part of a game like this. So I hope that made sense. If you liked it, feel free to like, comment, subscribe. And we'll have more videos coming out, some like AoE farming guide videos and stuff, and more stuff down the pipeline. So thanks so much for watching, and talk to you next time.